I stared at the flickering screen, the words I typed doing little to ease the familiar knot in my stomach. It had been decades since that trip to the Okefenokee, since we stumbled upon Arthur Finch's grim journal. But the memory still had the power to make the hairs on my arms stand on end. I'd never been one for ghost stories or Bigfoot sightings. Growing up, I was the kid who always looked for the rational explanation, the scientific reason behind every strange occurrence. Even as a college student, dragging my friends Chloe, Sam, and Maya into the deepest parts of the swamp, I'd laughed at their superstitions. But what we found that day, what we read in that waterlogged journal, had irrevocably changed my perspective. Some things I now knew with a bone-deep certainty defied all logic. Some maps, it turned out, led nowhere good at all. It was a sweltering late spring afternoon in the Okefenokee Swamp, that vast, primeval wilderness straddling southern Georgia and northern Florida. The air hung thick and heavy, a humid blanket that clung to your skin, making every breath feel like drawing soup into your lungs. The drone of unseen insects was a constant, low hum, occasionally punctuated by the croak of a bullfrog or the sudden splash of something unseen in the murky water. Chloe, Sam, Maya, and I were a few days into our nature exploration trip. It was supposed to be an adventure, a break from campus, a chance to see some real wilderness. Mostly, it consisted of us sweating profusely, swatting at mosquitoes the size of quarters, and Sam trying to convince Maya that gators could, in fact, climb trees, despite all evidence to the contrary. Seriously, Sam, give it a rest, Chloe sighed, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. The only thing climbing trees out here is probably us, trying to escape your terrible jokes. Sam grinned, unperturbed. Hey, a little fear keeps you sharp in the wilderness, right, Liam? Besides, you're the one who want to go off trail. Said we needed real adventure. I shrugged, pushing aside a curtain of Spanish moss. Well, this is it. Nobody else comes this deep. This is uncharted territory, practically. My compass, usually a steady guide, seemed to wobble a bit more than usual out here, but I dismissed it as magnetic interference from something in the ground. Maya, quiet as ever, pointed ahead with a slender finger. Look, something's there. Through the dense cypress knees and tangled vines, we saw it. A dark, unnatural shape half submerged in a particularly murky section of water. As we pushed closer, the smell of decay grew stronger, mingling with the earthy scent of the swamp. It was a severely rotted wooden canoe, listing precariously, its hull breached in several places. Whoa, Sam breathed, his usual bravado momentarily forgotten. Someone had a bad day, or a really, really long day. Chloe added, her voice tinged with unease. As we investigated, a glint of dark leather caught my eye, half buried in the muck near the canoe. I knelt, pushing aside thick, slimy roots. Hey, what's this? It was a leather-bound journal, water-damaged and stained, but remarkably intact. Its pages, though damp, seemed oddly protected, almost preserved. Nearby, a satchel lay spilled open, its contents scattered. Rusted surveying tools, a sextant corroded green, a compass with a shattered glass face, its needle stuck pointing nowhere. And then, the real kicker. Just beyond the satchel, tangled in a mess of roots and thick, black mud, was a skeletal hand. The rest of the skeleton was mostly obscured by decay and plant growth, but that hand was unmistakable. It was still clutching something, a pencil, its lead long gone, as if frozen mid-sentence. Chloe gasped, recoiling sharply. Liam, don't touch that. Who knows what diseases, what history is on that? Her face was pale, her usual practicality giving way to genuine revulsion. Relax, Chloe, it's just bones, Sam said, though his voice lacked its usual cheer. He looked a little green himself. Probably some poor old fisherman who got lost. Or something worse, Maya murmured, her eyes fixed on the skeletal hand. But morbid curiosity, as it often does, won out. Despite Chloe's protests, I carefully retrieved the journal. It felt heavy, strangely cold, even in the humid air. We have to see what this is. It's a discovery. We found a slightly drier patch of ground, a small rise covered in palmettos, and huddled together. The silence that followed was broken only by the incessant hum of the swamp and the nervous rustle of our clothes. I opened the journal. The first few pages were waterlogged beyond recognition, but deeper inside, the ink was surprisingly clear. "All right," I said, my voice a little hoarse. "Let's see who this guy was." I began to read the last testament of Arthur Finch. Journal entry. May 14th, the commission arrived this morning, delivered by a silent courier. No name, no return address, just a staggering sum of money and a request. A comprehensive, detailed cartographic survey of the uncharted eastern reaches of the Okefenokee Swamp. A challenge worthy of my skills. Arthur Finch, cartographer, prides himself on precision. This will be my masterpiece. I've set up my initial base in Folkestone, Georgia, a quaint, sleepy town that feels a world away from the task ahead. Journal entry. May 20th, first week of preliminary survey complete. The Okefenokee is a beast, a labyrinth of cypress and blackwater. My instruments are true, my measurements meticulously recorded. There's a raw, untamed beauty to it, but also a relentless, oppressive humidity. I've charted a significant portion of the perimeter, noting the subtle shifts in elevation, the flow of the currents. This map will be an unparalleled achievement. As I read Arthur's initial entries, I could almost hear the man's professional pride. He sounded like a true old-school cartographer, dedicated to his craft. Chloe, however, was already shifting uncomfortably. "So he was just a map guy? What's the big deal? Just wait?" I murmured, turning a page. Journal entry. June 2 NDA, peculiar discrepancy today. I returned to a section of the Willow Creek tributary that I had meticulously charted 3 days prior. My original survey showed a distinct, narrow channel leading to a small, cypress-studded island. Today, that channel was wider, almost a small lagoon, and the island seemed to have shifted subtly to the north. I remeasured, recalibrated. My instruments are functioning perfectly. Perhaps a sudden influx of water or the relentless churn of the swamp floor. I've noted it as dynamic hydrology for now. It's vexing, but not alarming. The Okefenokee is constantly reforming itself, a living, breathing entity. My map will capture its essence, even its fluidity. See, Sam piped up. Just a swamp doing swamp things. Nothing spooky yet. He tried to sound casual, but I noticed he was leaning in closer, his eyes fixed on the journal. Journal entry, June 10th, another anomaly. The Twin Oaks landmark I marked near the Blackwater Lake Inlet seems to have vanished. Or perhaps I misidentified it initially. I spent hours searching the area, cross-referencing my coordinates. Nothing. Only a dense thicket where the distinctive trees should have stood. My precision is legendary. Such an error is unthinkable. I'm attributing it to fatigue, or perhaps the sheer oppressive sameness of the landscape playing tricks on my eyes. I will resurvey this entire quadrant tomorrow with fresh resolve. "Vanished," Chloe whispered, a frown creasing her brow. "That's weird," I continued, the meticulous, almost clinical tone of Arthur's early entries slowly giving way to a hint of frustration, a subtle crack in his professional composure. He was dismissing these things, but I could feel his internal struggle, the way his rigid worldview was starting to chafe against the swamp's defiance of logic. Journal entry. June 18th, am reviewing my latest parchment, charting the serpentine paths of the Serpent's Coil section. The work is painstaking, but as I lean back, stretching my weary hands, I notice them. Faint, almost imperceptible lines. Not from my hand. They are too delicate, too precise to be accidental. They spiderweb across the blank spaces, across the areas I have yet to chart. I rubbed at them hard with my thumb. They remained stubbornly etched into the paper. I held it closer to the lantern. A trick of the light? A flaw in the parchment? I must be more tired than I thought. Nonsense. I will examine it again in the morning light. A shiver ran down my spine, and I heard Chloe make a small, involuntary sound. Sam's casual demeanor had evaporated. He was now completely silent, leaning forward, his gaze fixed on the journal. Journal entry. June 21 estate is no trick of the light. The lines are clearer now, and they have grown. They are not random. They are forming patterns, geometric shapes that bear no resemblance to any natural features I have ever encountered. In the swamp, the discrepancies have escalated. The serpent's coil I charted yesterday is utterly different today. A path I marked as impassable now winds through it, almost invitingly. I followed it against my better judgment. It led to a small, dark pool I had no record of, a place that felt ancient. When I returned to my camp, the shapes on the map were more defined. They are not flaws. They are appearing. Maya, who had been quiet until now, spoke, her voice barely a whisper. He's saying the map is drawing itself. I nodded, my throat dry. That's what it sounds like. Journal entry. June 25, teach the symbols. They are no longer just geometric. They are evolving into rudimentary, grotesque figures. Twisted limbs, half-glimpsed faces, things that seem to writhe within the very fibers of the paper. They are horrifying. I tried to burn the page, but the flame recoiled, the paper refusing to catch. I am horrified, yet a morbid fascination, a cartographer's desperate need to understand, keeps me tethered to this cursed parchment. Is someone tampering with my work? Is this some elaborate, cruel prank? Or am I hallucinating from the isolation, from the oppressive silence of this place? I am Arthur Finch. I do not hallucinate. Chloe let out a small, choked gasp. Oh my God. Sam looked like he'd seen a ghost, his eyes wide. Even Maya, usually so composed, had a hand pressed to her mouth. The sounds of the swamp around us suddenly seemed louder, more menacing. The chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves, they all seemed to take on a sinister quality. Journal entry. June 29, if the chilling realization has come. The markings appear after I've been to a particular section of the swamp. It's as if the map is drawing what I should have seen, or what the swamp wants me to see. I went to the whispering cypress grove today, a place I had struggled to navigate. When I returned, a new, distorted branch appeared on the map, reaching towards something unseen, something deeply unsettling. I feel a growing, unsettling sense of being observed, not by animals, but by the very land itself. I am no longer mapping the Okefenokee. It is mapping me. It is charting my path, not I. The air around us grew heavy. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows through the cypress trees. The swamp, once just a backdrop, now felt like an active participant in Arthur's story, and by extension, in ours. Journal entry, July 5, themey sanity phrase. I have abandoned my own observations, my own instruments. They are useless. My compass spins wildly. My GPS flickers and dies, showing only static. But the map shows the way. The new, unsettling lines seem to show paths through impossible terrain, paths that were not their moments before. They lure me deeper and deeper into the most remote, unmapped parts of the Okefenokee. I am compelled to follow them, a growing obsession taking hold, a desperate need to see where it leads. It whispers where to go. It promises revelation, a dark, unspeakable truth. He's going crazy, Sam whispered, his voice barely audible. We should stop reading. This is messing with my head. We can't, Chloe said, her eyes glued to the journal. We have to know what happened. I continued, my voice now a low monotone, almost hypnotized by Arthur's descent. Journal entry, July 10th. The swamp's embrace has become suffocating. The sounds are distorted now. Whispers in the wind that sound like my name. Unseen things rustling in the undergrowth that mimic the grotesque figures on my map. The sense of time has warped. Days blend into nights. My internal clock utterly lost. I am increasingly isolated. My initial cache of supplies, left at a marked point, is nowhere to be found. Attempts to retrace my path lead only to more convoluted, shifting waterways. I tried to make it back to the edge of the swamp, to the relative civilization near Waycross, Georgia, but the map, like a malevolent guide, pulls me deeper, its lines tightening around me. The grotesque figures on the map seemed to almost appear in his periphery in the swamp. He glimpsed shadowy shapes in the dense cypress knees, heard guttural, wet sounds that mimicked the scrawled symbols. The line between the map and reality blurred until it was almost non-existent. Journal entry, July 14 Th, the terrifying epiphany. It is not just reflecting the swamp's nature. It is the swamp, or at least a conduit for its malevolent, unknowable will. It is not charting a path through the swamp, but a path into its true, horrific essence. The vanishing islands, the shifting paths, they were the Okefenokee actively manipulating my reality, not my perception. It wants me here. It wants me to see. It wants me to become part of its design. My precision, my logic, my very sanity, all are being consumed. It's not paper. It's skin, or something more ancient. The swamp breathes through it. It consumes my senses, consumes my will. I am becoming charted. This place is alive, and it wants me to see its true face. Why now? The light was fading fast. The sounds of the swamp intensified, every croak and rustle seeming to echo Arthur's growing terror. Chloe had wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the heat. Sam was pale, his eyes darting nervously into the encroaching shadows. Maya was clutching my arm, her grip surprisingly tight. Journal entry, July 18th, scrawled erratic hand. I tried to charm my way back, to use the old ways, to find a path out. But my instruments are useless, mocking me. My compass spins wildly. The landscape shifts, laughs at my efforts. Every attempt to leave pulls me further in the new paths on the map, luring me deeper into a maze from which there is no return. The lines on the map constrict, forming a cage. I am the prisoner now, not the master. It showed me what lies beneath, what truly lies beneath the mud and water. The faces, they look like me now. They're my face. It's drawing me into itself. There is no escape. No escape from the map. No escape from the entry ended abruptly. The rest of the page was a horrifying mess of ink smears, lines that seemed to writhe and bleed into a dark, swirling pattern, almost like a grotesque, abstract portrait. It was the final, terrifying punctuation mark at the end of his chilling story. His skeleton, we realized, was the horrifying punctuation mark at the end of his chilling story. I closed the journal gently, the leather feeling strangely warm now, almost pulsing. A profound, chilling dread settled over us, a silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. Sam tried a forced joke, a weak, nervous laugh, but it died in his throat, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the swamp. Chloe, usually so grounded, looked utterly pale, her skepticism shattered beyond repair. Maya simply stared at the dark, still water around us, her eyes wide with a terror I knew mirrored my own. Then we looked down at the journal itself, at the crude, final map Arthur had drawn on its pages. It was a distorted, horrific landscape that seemed to subtly shift and breathe in the humid air, mirroring the unsettling shapes we now saw in the real swamp around us. And that's when we saw it. Faint, almost invisible lines forming on the blank pages of a journal he had not yet used, hinting that the drawing was not over. The swamp wasn't done mapping. "We need to go," Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible, a desperate plea. "Now," Sam added, his voice tight with fear. Without another word, a silent, mutual agreement passed between us. Our camping trip was over. We abandoned the rest of our gear, our tents, our food, everything but the essential water bottles and the journal itself, which I clutched like a lifeline. We began to make our way out of the swamp, not caring about the marked paths anymore, just desperate to put as much distance as possible between ourselves and the Okefenokee's chilling secrets. Every rustle in the cypress trees, every ripple on the black water seemed to whisper Arthur Finch's name, seemed to watch our frantic retreat. We finally stumbled out onto the relative safety of the road, near Homerville, Georgia, hours later, long after dark. Exhausted, covered in mud and mosquito bites, but most of all, thoroughly terrified. We barely spoke on the long drive back, the silence in the car punctuated only by the hum of the engine and our ragged breaths, As we reached civilization, Chloe, her voice still barely a whisper, asked the question that hung heavy in the air. What happened to his map? The actual, big one he was working on? I shook my head, the terrifying implication dawning on all of us. If the small journal was drawing itself, if it was an extension of the swamp's malevolent will, what was the bigger, more detailed map doing? We never found out. But to this day, decades later, I still can't shake the feeling that the map and the swamp's true nature are still out there, shifting, drawing, and waiting for the next cartographer to dare chart its impossible depths. And that thought, even now after so many years, gives me chills.